What a great place to hunt deer. Wisconsin's natural and agricultural landscape provides perfect habitat for white-tailed deer. And it's no secret, Wisconsin deer hunters are passionate about their sport. Hi, I'm Dan Small, and welcome to Deer Hunt Wisconsin 2011, our 20th special on Wisconsin's deer hunting opportunities. You know, Wisconsin gun and bow hunters have logged an average annual harvest of 440,000 deer over the last decade. During gun season alone, that's about one deer for every 2 hunters. Back in 2000, Wisconsin hunters recorded the all-time highest one-year harvest total of any state when we registered more than 615,000 deer. Over the past decade, our annual harvest includes an average of more than 165,000 bucks with bow and gun combined. In fact, Wisconsin has the most bucks of any state in the Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young records. When this year's gun deer season opens on November 19th, some 650,000 hunters of all ages will take to the fields and forests in pursuit of deer. Already this fall, more than 250,000 bow hunters have been at it, and from early reports, it looks like they're having a great season. In the next hour, we'll share some advice on how to find a place to hunt, suggest some hunting strategies for different types of terrain, weather conditions, time of day, and even days of the week, all of which can make a difference in your chances for success. We'll look at efforts to recruit new hunters, learn the new rules for this year, get an update on efforts to control chronic wasting disease, or CWD, and get a first-hand look at ongoing research on deer numbers and the impact of predators like bears, wolves, and coyotes. We'll get some tips on how to prevent hunting accidents and have a safer hunt. Learn about high-tech help for hunters even when you're in the field. And we'll get a region-by-region forecast for this year's hunt. And we'll wrap things up with some great deer camp stories and other traditions of the hunt. Throughout the show, I'll share a series of tips that might help make you a better hunter. These are things I've learned over the years, some by trial and error, and some from other hunters. Let's face it, Wisconsin's 9-day gun deer season is so brief, a hunter has to be ready for anything. You got to learn to capitalize on every opportunity, as another one might not come along. My first tip is a simple one. Make a checklist and keep it in your back tag holder. Take a small piece of paper, a 3x5 card, and write down everything you'll need for your hunt, from gun and ammo to the rope to haul out your deer. Be sure to include toilet paper, a knife, a compass, back tag, string to tie on your carcass tag, and anything else you carry in with you. And do it now so you can replace what's missing before the season. Put it all in a small pack and store it where you'll find it. You don't want to be rummaging through desk drawers for a back tag just before sunup on opening day, or wondering where your ammo clip went as you climb into your stand. Throughout the show, you'll see the DNR call center number on your screen. This is the number to call if you have a question about regulations. Call center staffers are available 7 days a week from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m., and additional staff will be on duty during the gun deer season to answer your questions in English, Spanish, or Hmong. That number is 888-WDNR-INFO. We'll be talking to a number of DNR experts, so let's start at the top. Last week, I caught up with DNR Secretary Kathy Stepp. Let's hear what she had to say while I go do a little scouting. I'm talking with DNR Secretary Kathy Stepp. Kathy, you're no stranger to the DNR. You served a term on the Natural Resources Board, and now you've been secretary for about 10 months. Do you have any new insights to share, especially in the always challenging arena of wildlife management?
Well, probably the biggest insight in wildlife management is just the incredible dedication and passion with which our biologists research this. And, everybody knows it's a no-win question when we're talking about deer management and populations and goals and estimates and the like. It depends on who you're standing in front of, whether or not they're going to agree with you. There's always somebody out there that is going to think there's a different, better way to do it. So my challenge, frankly, is to make sure that we're embracing the public more, we're more inclusive of them in our decision making, that we're not just talking at our sportsmen and women, that we're talking with them and listening to them. And I think we've got a long way to go in that regard, so I'm anxious to prove how we can do that better.
Kathy, we've got a new deer trustee now. Can you tell us what hunters might expect out of his study and how they might have some input into his research?
Well, I think the unique thing about this situation and the really important thing about integrity in this process is that I don't have input into what the deer trustee is doing, and that's really important. So when we were talking about credibility gaps and I think how our sporting men and women have kind of felt disconnected from decisions in DNR, I'm hoping that this trustee, Dr. Kroll, can come in and bring some credibility to some of the practices that we've been using over the years. I'm sure there's going to be suggestions for improvement, I would imagine. There's always things we can do better, and there's probably going to be some things that he's going to agree with that we've been doing. So once again, my job is to make sure internally that we're fully cooperative with his efforts. We're providing in a timely manner whatever information it is that he's seeking. And then, of course, to be very cooperative and open and laying everything out and saying, here it is, what can we do better, and how can we rebuild that gap and get more people engaged again.
What is the DNR doing to improve and increase hunter access to land, both public and private?
Well, Dan, we get most of our lead from the legislature on this. So when we talk about public properties that are purchased with stewardship bonding, the good faith and credit of the public taxpayer, we're making sure that they're fully accessible, especially for hunting. And then in properties that we're looking at rebuilding some infrastructure where we've already got public access, but yet I don't think we've done a good enough job in measuring up to the public's expectations of those properties and their management. So we're looking at rebuilding some infrastructure, doing some maintenance that's been let go for a very long time, so that we can make sure when the public is on the properties that they've got the best enjoyment and experience possible.
Kathy, a lot of hunters are really concerned about wolves, as you know. Can you give us an update on efforts to get wolves removed from the endangered species list?
Sure. We have not let up on our efforts in DNR. In fact, I've been a very vocal, outspoken proponent for Wisconsin in this issue. We've been pretty disappointed with the Fish and Wildlife Service's efforts so far, struggling with this introduction of a potential second species of wolf, which would really muddy the waters when we're talking about how do we define populations of the wolves that are out there to deal with. So my job is to continue to be an advocate, continue to be a squeaky wheel, and make sure that we're also building consensus with neighboring states so that we can stand together and inform the federal government on just what a critical issue this is. When you talked about worries for hunters in Wisconsin, we're equally concerned about the safety and livestock protection issues that we're going through in northern Wisconsin. So folks all over the northern region have some tremendous concerns there, and we in DNR are ready, willing, and able to manage this species as soon as we're given the green light from the feds.
Do you have a message for hunters as they get ready to embark on this year's gun deer season?
I do. I'm really excited about this season. First of all, it's going to be my first season as a deer hunter, so I'm excited about the experience. But my message is to come on out and engage. I know we can do that, and if we can continue that excitement, we can spread that message to the nation about this is where the action is for whitetail hunting in the country. Come here to Wisconsin and to enjoy that, and we're going to show you how to do it right.
Kathy, thanks a lot. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. One thing you should do every year before deer season is sight in your rifle or shotgun and make sure it's operating properly. Even if it worked fine last season, take it to a range and check it out. Many sportsmen's clubs and ranges hold sight-in clinics each fall where you can get help with this if you need it. The state-owned McMiller Sports Center, located near Eagle in the southern unit of the Kettle Moraine State Forest, is open daily from now until November 19th with trained staff ready to help you. If you put a new scope on your rifle, the first step is to bore sight it to get the scope and bore in the same ballpark. You can also shoot it at 25 yards to get it on paper. And then take it to a 100-yard range and shoot several 3-shot groups with a good rest. Adjust the scope as needed, fire a couple more shots, and you should be good to go. You don't need tack driving accuracy to kill a deer, but you want to be confident you can make a clean shot. Historically, many groups of hunters would sit in their favorite stands opening morning and then make drives the rest of the season. Up in the North Woods, some folks would still hunt if conditions were right. Today, most hunters sit in tree stands all of opening day and Sunday morning, and then they hang it up by noon to watch football. Now, I'm a big Packers fan myself, but you won't shoot many deer sitting in front of a TV. A safe hunt is always a good hunt, but every year a third of all gun-related hunting injuries are self-inflicted. Paying careful attention to our hunting practices can reduce these injuries. Recreational Safety Warden Kyle Drake reminds us of basic firearm and personal safety. Kyle, what advice do you have for hunters to make sure they don't injure themselves or other people when they're in the field?
Well, Dan, historically, look at our hunting incidents in Wisconsin, especially during the firearm deer season. We find that about 90% of our incidents, hunters either shooting another member of their hunting party or shooting themselves self-inflicted. And when we talk about hunting safety, we always talk about our 4 basic firearm safety rules. And the first one is treat every firearm as if it's loaded. Every time you pick up that firearm, make sure that safety's on, open the action, visually inspect that firearm, make sure no shell in the chamber and no shells in the magazine. This is a potentially lethal piece of equipment, so we need to treat it with respect. The second rule is always control the muzzle. The muzzle, as you know, is the business end of the firearm. It's where the projectile comes from. And we got to make sure we're never pointing that muzzle at ourselves or anybody else. Again, never point that muzzle at anything you don't want to be pointing at. The third rule is be sure of your target and what's beyond. This comes in very, very important during deer season on deer drives. Recognize that thing out there as a legal target. Make sure you look beyond that target. Make sure there's not a house or a road or another member of your hunting party back there. Especially if you're shooting at moving deer or flying birds, something like that. Identify that target and look beyond. And the fourth rule is keep your finger outside the trigger guard and the safety on until you're ready to fire. But again, immediately after discharging that firearm, make sure you put your safety back on.
Now, there's an easy way to remember those rules, isn't there?
Yeah, we go by the acronym of TAB-K. So treat every firearm as if it's loaded, always control the muzzle, be sure of your target and what's beyond, and keep your finger outside the trigger until you're ready to fire.
Now, I notice you're carrying a safety harness, and I've fallen out of a tree stand a couple times. I always wear one now. Why don't you tell us the best way to use this harness?
Yeah, you're not alone. Statistics show between a third and half the people that use tree stands will fall out of them at some point in their career. So what we recommend is make sure you're safe when getting into that tree stand as well as when you're hunting. And I think probably tree stand safety falls into 3 categories. The first category is make sure that you properly install your equipment. The other big factor is when they're climbing in and out of the stand itself. People are falling out and climbing up in the ladder. If you're climbing up the ladder, maintain 3 points of contact, and then be careful crawling in. And of course, the final thing is people actually falling out of tree stands, and that's where the safety harness comes into effect. Get a safety harness, wear it. Make sure it's got the leg protection or leg straps too, a full body harness. Get something you like. There's many manufacturers, many designs out there. Get something you like and wear it, whether you're 5 feet off the ground or 25 feet off the ground.
Well, thanks a lot, Kyle. That's good advice, and let's hope we have a safe season.
Thanks, Dan.
Here's another tip. Pay attention to wind direction. Bow hunters always do, and deer do too. But most gun hunters pay no attention to the wind. It's easy on a breezy or windy day like this, but on a calm day when the wind currents are more subtle, you can just crush a few leaves and toss them in the air to see which way the wind is blowing. If you sit or hunt from a tree, get downwind or at least crosswind of where you expect to see deer, or you can still hunt into the wind. And on a windy day, you can sometimes walk right up to deer if you're still hunting. You know, Wisconsin hunters are a curious bunch, and they ask a lot of questions about deer. Just ask any deer biologist or listen in on a conversation around any deer camp. Last year, DNR deer researchers and biologists launched an ambitious deer research effort. And the goal was to answer some of the most frequent questions hunters have about deer numbers, deer predators, and deer sightings. Chris Jakes, the DNR's lead deer researcher, has an update on what's happened during the first year of this project, and he gives us a heads up on what's coming as the project continues.
In 2010, the department launched a pretty ambitious deer research program aimed at better understanding mortality factors in deer populations across Wisconsin. This is a 2-phase project asking 2 different questions. One being, what are the factors influencing buck mortality across the state, and the other being what factors are influencing fawn survival and recruitment. The buck study is designed really to quantify the percentage of bucks that are getting killed by hunters annually And the fawn survival study was born out of concerns and questions that the hunters of the state have raised about the impacts that predators may be having on fawn survival and recruitment rates. So during winter 2010, we captured over 200 deer in northern Wisconsin. About 80 of those were bucks and 125 were does. In the east central study area, we captured 135 animals, 55 of them being bucks and about 80 being does. We captured deer using a variety of trapping techniques, including helicopter capturing and a number of different ground trapping techniques, including box traps, netted cage traps, and drop nets. We also captured 104 fawns across Wisconsin this past spring, of which 68 were captured in the east central study area and 36 in the northern forest region. So as anticipated, we're seeing a number of causes of mortality that vary regionally across Wisconsin. In the northern forest region, we're seeing both natural mortality and capture-related mortality. Natural mortality causes consist of predation events, starvation, vehicle collisions, some disease, and some unknown causes of death.
So that fawn never stood. There's this material on the hooves, this white gelatinous material. That's an indication of a newly born fawn. They'll wear it off right away when they begin to walk. So the fact that it's still present indicates that the fawn never walked.
In the eastern region of the state, mortality is primarily by way of vehicle collisions. So we won't be using helicopters this year because of public concern over excess mortality associated with that technique and due to our success with ground capture techniques. That said, we'll increase our ground trapping efforts and begin those efforts earlier to ensure that we capture a sufficient number of animals, particularly adult bucks.
A lot of the success of this research depends on hunters like you and me volunteering our time. And the DNR has a web page where you can learn more and sign up to help capture deer. Another way we can help is by recording deer and other wildlife we see while we're hunting on the Deer Hunter Wildlife Survey. Wildlife managers are interested in any sightings you have of deer and 17 other species. And they also want trail camera pictures of endangered or rare animals. They'll use this information to help estimate the abundance and distribution of these species. And they'll use this along with other survey data to help make management decisions. A survey of this kind only gets better with more reports. To sign up, go to dnr.wi.gov. Click or search Deer Hunter Wildlife Survey. You can also have a look at some of the trail camera photos folks have sent in. Some of them are pretty interesting. We talked about paying attention to wind direction, but you should make an effort to control your scent too. Shower before you hunt, and use a scent-free deodorant. Don't wear aftershave or cologne. Hang your hunting clothes outside, not indoors, where they'll pick up household odors. Or you can store them in a plastic tote box along with some soil or leaves from the area where you hunt. Use a scent control product. There are several liquid products on the market, and even a couple of battery-powered devices that eliminate odors. And don't wear your hunting boots or jackets in taverns, garages, or wherever they can pick up non-woodsy odors. You can even step in cow manure or deer droppings when you're walking to and from your stand to mask your scent. A lot has changed since chronic wasting disease was found in Wisconsin back in 2002. We know much more about the disease now and how it spreads. We also have a 15-year CWD response program that emphasizes preventing the spread of the disease while controlling its intensity and distribution. The DNR recently launched a new effort to share CWD information with hunters and landowners. And you may have seen newspaper ads, TV commercials, and billboards with the Hunt, Harvest, Help message. Don Bates, the CWD Operations Manager, is here to tell us more about this new program and what it means. Well, Don, what have we learned about CWD since it was discovered here in Wisconsin back in 2002?
Well, in the last 10 years, we've learned quite a bit, Dan. We do know that the disease is transmitted both by direct deer-to-deer contact and by soil contamination with the prions. And we also know that the disease has progressed through the years. In 2002, in our western zone, prevalence rates were about 3%, and they've now increased to about 8 to 12%. And in the southeastern zone, they've increased from about 2% to 6%.
Now, you have a new program called Hunt Harvest Help. Give us some background on that.
Hunt Harvest Help is our outreach program for chronic wasting disease. It targets landowners and hunters in the chronic wasting disease zone and offers information on a new website regarding the disease and what folks can do to help combat that disease. Basically, Hunt Harvest and Help stands for hunt. We want folks to continue to enjoy hunting deer in Wisconsin. It's a great opportunity, and we have a great deer herd throughout the state. Harvest, we want them to harvest a deer for its valuable meat and for its trophy, personal trophy to them. And we want them to help by possibly donating an extra deer or venison to the local food pantries.
Well, Don, I understand the department has a new CWD response plan. Tell us about that.
We do have a new CWD response plan, and it was just formed last year in 2010. And the major difference between the old one and the new one is the old one looked to eradicate the disease. This new plan accepts an endemic area of CWD in the southern part of the state, and our goal is to limit the spread of CWD from outside of that and prevent new introductions elsewhere.
Did hunters and landowners have input to this plan?
The entire plan was based on what we heard from hunters and landowners as well as the science. Basically, hunters told us that they would rather accept a small amount of disease or a certain level of disease than bring the deer herds to very low numbers. So it's a compromise between reducing the herd to extremely low levels where hunters were dissatisfied with the deer herd, and controlling the disease at the same time.
Okay. Some of your new spots feature Matt Kenseth. How did he get involved?
He, as you know, besides being a champion race car driver, is also a Wisconsin native from southern Wisconsin. He hunts in the CWD zone, and he tries to hunt deer whenever he can.
I'm Matt Kenseth.
Matt was willing to volunteer his time for this effort, and basically keyed in on the teamwork involved with a race team is very similar to the teamwork involved with hunters and landowners working together to combat this disease.
Well, it's certainly a great spot. Thanks a lot, Don.
Thank you.
To learn more about CWD and the Hunt Harvest Help Program, visit the knowcwd.com webpage. You'll find the latest on CWD research, some great videos, and info on what hunters and landowners can do to help slow the spread of CWD in Wisconsin. Now here's another tip. Most deer live within a square mile or less, so pick 40 to 80 acres and get to know where the deer feed, where they bed, and the routes they take from one to the other. Learn every ridge, trail, food plot, and escape route. That'll take some pre-season scouting, and it might take years before you know the woods as well as the deer do, but that's your goal. You want to mark these spots on a topographic map, or use a GPS if you have one. I hunt in big woods up north, but my son and I have taken 25 deer, missed a few, and passed up many more from just 4 tree stands that are within sight of each other. Why? Because we hunt a major bottleneck where deer always cross between oak woods and a swamp. Wisconsin has a strong hunting heritage with traditions that run deep in our families and communities. Keeping those traditions alive depends on recruiting new hunters of all ages into the sport. One of several options for recruiting new hunters is the DNR's Learn to Hunt program. Last December, a group called Kids and Mentors Outdoors, or CAMO, held a deer hunt at McKenzie Environmental Center near Poynette. The weather was cold, but the kids and mentors had a great time. Syndicated outdoor columnist Mark Walters is the founder and president of CAMO.
Looks like a good area. Get some deer going. Did you hear that?
CAMO stands for Kids and Mentors Outdoors. We're about getting kids outdoors, and we're trying to teach them to do the right thing and be active. I've been writing this column since '89, and I've realized in the last 10 years that we're losing a lot of our kids on outdoor experiences, whether it's canoeing, sitting around a campfire, backpacking, hunting, or fishing. And I have a lot of friends that had the same thoughts. So in December of 2006, in my column, I wrote that I had an idea that maybe we could turn something around.
Straight down there. Down the bottom. You got her.
That winter, Mark met with several other hunting enthusiasts from around the state, and in the spring of 2007, these future mentors launched Camo and formed its first 4 chapters.
Just like that.
The way that we find kids for camo is it could be a neighbor kid, it could be a nephew that doesn't have, maybe that there's not a father in the picture, a lot of single parents.
Because it looked like a really good solid hit right in the front.
We reach out through the schools. We get a lot of publicity, and but I will say this: it is hard. It is hard. Kids are busy. A lot of school sports. That's a big competition, which is one of the reasons why I started Camo. I've raised a few kids myself, and by the time they're 13, 14 years old, they're so involved in so many different things that it's real hard to start them at that point.
It doesn't get much better than that.
I think that not only are we getting kids hunting and fishing and canoeing, but in a way we actually teach them how to be biologists in a small way. They're learning a lot about the environment. This weekend, the weather, you know, and just for this weekend, an example was we had a biologist come in here on Friday night and talk, and then we had a superintendent of Buckhorn State Park come in here and talk, and we had a game warden come in here and talk. So we teach them ethics, we teach them biology, we teach them how to have a good time, we teach them patience, teach them how to be tough. You got to be tough if you're going to do this. You're going to go out and walk out in the dark and sit in a blind, and how to dress.
Help with that?
I got it.
I'll help you with that. Let me get a hand in there.
Dylan was interested in the deer hunt coming up, so we got him signed up and found out, made sure he had the proper requirements and stuff. His hunter safety has been completed. He's a first-year hunter this year, deer hunting. He has went with his dad as just a walk along and stuff, so he was more than happy to go, and I'm glad he came. So
I've been hunting, this is my 3rd year hunting. The 2 years before, when I was 9, I started hunting with my dad. He let me come with him, and I'd learn all I could. And then 10th year, I could. And this is my first year using a rifle. I've went through hunter safety, so I was ready for this. Very exciting when you see that doe. When the first time I saw that and I have a rifle in my hand, I'm like, it's time, it's the right time, and just get a good shot.
Any kid that comes through this with us, whether it's one-on-ones, which we do a lot of one-on-ones, and like the gal that I take, I do a lot of one-on-ones with her, and that she just loves it. I actually, she's written part of my column when she did something with me, and people like that too. They like that when a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old puts something in newsprint.
Oh, I've learned so much from Mark. Which way to tell if a deer was traveling by the hoofs. I thought it was the other way around. So it's the fun experience that you get to be outside and you get to see all these different animals and learn so much.
This is different types of cherry. So there's some.
Our mentors on their one-on-ones and on these events are having just as much fun as the kids. You can develop a relationship with a kid and make a difference in their life. How you could get involved in Camo is, our website is camokids.org. We have right on our website how you can start a chapter, but we will come and help you start. And we have insurance. We will do everything we can do to help you to have a successful Camo chapter. Do your best to get kids in the outdoors for our long-term future in every way. As hunters, as outdoorsmen, maybe even for our society. There's just so much to learn that kids aren't learning. When I was a kid, it was like, I'd have to say, probably 70% of kids learned. You just took it for granted. You went hunting or you played outside a lot more, and I think we're getting away from that, and that's kind of sad. I don't think it bodes well for our long-term future, and hopefully we can turn that around.
So what do you think of this Camo group, huh? The Kids and Mentors Outdoors.
I mean, it was exciting. I mean, I've never even heard of the Camo group before, but coming out here, seeing the Camo group, I mean, it was exciting to be in the Camo group this year. I was glad to do it, too. Right now, I'd be sitting at home watching TV with my little brother.
What'd you have more fun doing?
This.
There you go. Here you go.
We all have someone to thank for taking the time and interest to introduce us to hunting. As you make your hunting plans, consider taking along someone new to the sport. Share your knowledge and enthusiasm with them, and you just might end up creating a new hunter. And now here's another hunting tip. Don't do lunch. I don't mean don't eat lunch, just don't leave the woods. Most hunters walk back to the truck or camp for lunch, and they move deer going out of the woods and coming back in. So sit tight. Dress warmly enough and carry a drink and a sandwich. I've shot several deer while other hunters were doing lunch. Many of us hunt in farm country with a lot of wide open spaces and small patches of cover. It doesn't take much to hide a deer. They'll hide in standing corn, of course, but also in tiny swales surrounded by open fields, small woodlots close to town, and other places you might not think of looking. Now, you can still hunt in farm country, but the big difference is deer usually see you coming. But if you walk slowly and stay alert, you might get a shot at a bedded deer because they'll sometimes sit as tight as a rabbit if they think you'll walk by. Deer use fence rows for cover too, so stand at fence corners when others are making a drive. Even a big buck will crawl on its belly and hide in a small ditch if there's no cover. Historically, most hunters started as kids, like those we saw in that winter hunt segment. But today, we're losing older hunters faster than we can recruit youngsters to the sport. So some folks are working to introduce adults to hunting as well. If you saw last year's deer hunt special, you may remember Carl Malcolm from our campfire scene. Since we saw him last, Carl finished his PhD in wildlife ecology at UW-Madison, and one of his ongoing projects is a Learn to Hunt program that involves University of Wisconsin students as mentors and as hunters. Carl, first of all, congratulations on your degree.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate it.
Why don't you tell us about your efforts to recruit new hunters?
Sure, I'd be glad to. You know, you mentioned a lot of hunters starting off as children. Another commonality that a lot of the hunters, you know, you and I included, and probably a lot of our viewers here, is the fact that they started hunting in rural areas. You know, it's part of our culture where you grow up in a rural place, everybody gets excited about the deer opener, and it's a really natural thing to become interested in that. When you get onto a college campus, there are a lot of people coming from different corners of the world, a lot of different backgrounds, and not necessarily as many hunters. There's still that interest, though, in people's mind. There's just not necessarily the opportunity for them to have an experience. And so these Learn to Hunt programs on our college campus are gearing people that aren't necessarily kids, and a lot of them aren't from rural backgrounds, but they really want to get that opportunity to learn more about it. So that's where these programs we've been working on fit in.
Well, why don't you walk us through this deer hunt event that you did? What did you actually do?
Well, first afternoon, we had firearms safety training and practice. From there, we transitioned from the shooting range to our local foods co-op here in Madison, the Willie Street Co-op on the west side of town. And that's a pretty cool relationship if you think about it, because a lot of people don't necessarily think about local foods and hunting on the same wavelength, but a lot of our hunters are really interested in hunting because of their interest in having good, healthy, local, sustainable food. So we did some of our training at the Willie Street Co-op. We had a great wild game dinner there. The other mentors helped me prepare a number of dishes so they could taste ducks and elk and deer and wild turkey and get a chance to really understand and appreciate how awesome the food that comes from these animals we hunt really can be. And then one of my favorite parts about the program is getting everybody kind of in a circle to discuss our motivations for being there, hearing why people would sign up for a program like this. You know, a lot of our participants are coming from urban backgrounds. They don't know the first thing about hunting. Sometimes the things that they think about hunters or hunting might be stereotypical and not necessarily reflective of all hunters in our community. And, you know, it's a really fun discussion to have people talking about their motivations and interests for being there.
And then they go hunting.
And then they get a little bit of sleep because by then it's been kind of a late night. They get up real early the next day and we get them out in the woods. Yeah.
And did anyone get a deer?
Yeah, we had one participant actually shoot a really nice 8-point buck the second afternoon of our hunt, and she was thrilled about it. So that was the one deer taken. But one of the really cool things about it, I mentioned the focus on food, and everybody was so excited to try to get a little bit of venison. And this gal who got the deer was nice enough to help divvy up her venison to the whole group. And, you know, while we did that, we actually had everybody getting their hands on this deer and learning about how to process their own deer. So the group kind of got together. We butchered the deer, and the gal was generous enough to split the meat up with all of the other participants who were interested in that. So it was pretty neat.
Now, do you think these young people will continue hunting?
I think some of them will, you know, but for those who don't necessarily continue hunting, I can guarantee they've walked away from the program with a different perspective of hunters and hunting, and a better appreciation for the fact that we as hunters really love the resource and love the land. You know, we're not just out there trying to kill an animal. We are out there appreciating these animals and appreciating nature. And I know that people have left the program with that kind of appreciation for the hunting community that they didn't necessarily have before that. I can also guarantee you that for every one of these programs, there have been a few return customers who are going to be coming in and buying hunting licenses out of the program for sure.
Well, Carl, thanks for sharing that story, and keep up the great work.
You bet, Dan.
To learn more about the Learn to Hunt program and other ways you can help recruit new hunters, log on to the DNR website and search for Learn to Hunt. You know, I've done a couple of Learn to Hunt programs, but they were all with turkeys. I haven't done. Here are some tips for hunting under different weather conditions. On a calm, dry day, deer will stay bedded in thick stuff like this if nothing moves them, so sit if there are other hunters in the woods, or make drives if yours is the only party. Deer need to drink every day, just as you and I do, so check around the edges of ponds and along stream banks for deer tracks. You'll find where they come down for a drink and where they cross a stream. These are often good spots to sit, especially in dry weather. Before or just after a storm, deer often move to feed, regardless of the time of day, so sit near trails and feeding areas like oaks or farm fields. On rainy or snowy days, cold, wet hunters will get up and move around, and they'll move deer, so you should sit or still hunt. If your Blaze Orange jacket isn't waterproof, carry a raincoat in your pack and wear it under your Blaze Orange. I did that on a rainy day and sat in my tree all morning listening to wood frogs. A nice 8-pointer came along around 11 a.m. and he went home with me. Deer talk to each other year-round, not just during the rut. So even on a gun hunt, I carry grunt, bleat, and snort calls, and I've used all three to advantage over the years. A loud bleat will sometimes stop a running deer. A snort or a wheeze will sometimes confuse a deer that snorts at you first but hasn't winded you yet. And a grunt will often turn a deer that has walked past or bring it out of the brush for a clear shot. You know, one of the most popular segments on this show every year is the annual hunting forecast for each region. If you hunt in more than one place, or if you talk to other hunters, you know that deer densities vary from one part of the state to another. Some areas have more deer than the habitat can sustain, while in others, deer are fewer in number and they're scattered across the landscape. DNR deer biologist Dan Herchard is here to give us an idea of what you might expect to find in the area where you plan to hunt. Well, Dan, let's start by talking about one of Wisconsin's most traditional deer hunting areas, the Northern District. How's it look?
Things in the north are really rebounding. We've had 2 consecutive winters with mild conditions that have allowed the deer to survive at high numbers, as well as 2 early springs with early green-ups. Now, the early green-ups have allowed the does to come through with good condition and produce good amounts of fawns. We have had conservative harvests in 2009 and 2010. Those 2 things combined will allow a lot of antlerless deer and a lot of older age class bucks for the hunters this year. This year we have 6 units that are designated as buck only. That's down from 16 last year. We'd like to encourage herd growth yet in those 6 units, so therefore the buck only category. In 18 additional units, we have regular season framework. In the regular season framework, we have antlerless quota, a limited antlerless quota, in a return to more of a traditional style of hunt. In 18 additional units, we have herd control framework with abundant antlerless permits available. We're trying to like to encourage hunters to shoot additional antlerless deer, as well as the bucks that are going to be out there. The Northeast District looks really similar to the Northern District. They've also had 2 mild winters, good conditions with fawn production. We've also reduced the buck-only units to only 2, down from 4 last year. We've had 2 improved to the point where we can have a limited antlerless quota in those units. The remaining units in the Northeast District are in the herd control framework. A lot of those units are farmland units with significant overpopulation of deer. We'd like to really encourage hunters to shoot some antlerless deer in the farmland units.
Now, I understand in both the northern and the northeast district, a fair number of deer are wearing ear tags and collars. What about those?
Yeah, the research projects that we've started last January tagged a significant number of deer, as you've mentioned. Those deer are fair game. If anyone sees those deer and they are part of their bag, we encourage them to harvest those deer and contact our researchers so that we can collect the data.
How about West Central now? How do things look there?
The West Central District had significant snowfalls last year. However, the winter severity index never reached more than a mild condition, so there are plenty of deer for hunters to shoot this year. In the West Central, we have 25 units that are 20% or greater than their overwinter goal. So all those units have been designated as herd control. We all have abundant antlerless permits available for hunters in those areas. We also have 5 additional units that are regular season framework with a limited antlerless quota.
How about the Southern District? I know a lot of hunters are going to stay in the south and hunt.
Conditions in the south do look good. With the crops being harvested on a timely manner this year, it's unlikely that deer are going to seek the refuge of standing crops, so they'll be available for hunters' harvest. Food resources and winter conditions weren't a factor in the Southern District last year. I think hunters will have unparalleled opportunities this year.
How about the venison donation program? How does that work?
Well, we have processors across the state signed up to take excess deer that hunters are able to harvest. The deer are then processed into ground venison, and that meat is distributed to food pantries across the state. This is the 12th year of the venison donation program. To date, over 77,000 deer have been donated, and hunters have contributed $127,000 of their own money to help assist with this program as well.
Well, that sounds like a great program, and it looks like we're in for a good hunt. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Now, here's my last tip. Use your senses. Don't make the mistake of looking for a whole deer. Train your eyes to spot movement and look for the flick of an ear or the flash of a tail. In thick pines, stay low and watch for moving legs. A good pair of lightweight binoculars can really enhance your vision. About 75 yards from one of my tree stands in a thick oak woods, there's a lone birch that's barely visible. When there's no snow, I check it often as I scan the woods. And more than once, that patch of white has disappeared for a moment as a deer walks past on its way to my stand. Use your ears, too. My hearing isn't what it used to be, but I still hear deer before I see them coming in the dry woods. You need to learn to distinguish a squirrel's light hop, hop, hop from a deer's heavier step, step, step. On rare occasion, you'll even smell a deer before you see it, especially a musty old buck that's been rutting. When you down a deer this season, approach it from downwind and notice from how far away you can smell it. You can sometimes sniff out a wounded or dead deer that's hard to find in thick brush. Now let's face it, nothing you do will guarantee you'll shoot a deer, but these tips just might help put you in that class of successful hunters who'll dine on venison this winter. There are several new regulations in place for 2011 that might impact you depending on where and how you hunt. I talked with Tom Van Haren, the Rules and Regulations Specialist for the DNR Warden Corps. Well, Tom, how can people find out about the new regulations for this year?
Well, Dan, the easiest way is for them to go to our 2011 deer hunting regulation pamphlet. We renew it each year with the new season dates and new rules. They can also call our call center, or they can go online and find this pamphlet there as well.
So what are some of the new rules?
Well, on page 4 of this pamphlet, each year we do list all the new rules so people can easily find them. Some of the rules that are in there this year that a person will find, the first one is that all youth under the age of 18 are automatically issued an antlerless deer carcass tag this year when they purchase a gun deer hunting license. This tag is valid in any unit statewide, and it replaces what we used to call the first year hunter education graduate antlerless tag. The advantage to this tag, however, is they can get one each year until they turn 18. It can be used anywhere in the state, including those regular deer management units where people otherwise have to buy a tag for $12 or $20. It's also good in the regular buck-only units for the youth. So they can harvest an antlerless deer in those buck units. And it also disabled hunters with the proper disabled hunting permit and military personnel home on furlough or leave can use their regular gun buck deer carcass tag for deer of either sex statewide in any unit, as they have in past years, including these buck-only units. The herd control units that we have this year had some minor changes. We're over 70-some herd control units this year. The advantage to that is hunters will be able to take advantage of their free herd control tag that's issued with their gun deer license in all those units, and have the opportunity to purchase additional antlerless deer tags for $2 a piece for those units. The Ernebuck zone is another area where we had a fairly significant change this year. In the CWD zone, which has the Ernebuck requirements, the Ernebuck requirement this year does not apply to a hunter's gun buck deer carcass tag or their archery buck deer carcass tag. Those two tags can be filled without having to earn the buck first by shooting an antlerless deer. All the other tags a hunter might want to use in the CWD zone, they do have to comply with Ernebuck requirements. The other rule that's not in the pamphlet specifically is that archery deer hunters this year, for the first time statewide, will be able to hunt with their archery gear during the 9-day gun deer season. The archery season will still close on Friday, the day before the gun deer season opens, but just for one day. Then it will reopen back for the rest of the archery season until it closes late in January. I would remind archery hunters, however, if they're going to go out during that 9-day season, they do need to wear blaze orange clothing like all other hunters. And the archery deer tags can only be filled by that person with archery gear. You cannot tag a deer with an archery tag that was filled by a gun, for example. So those are some of the main rules that have changed for this year. But again, I would remind hunters to go to page 4 of our deer hunting regulation pamphlet, where they'll find all these new rules and a couple more small changes in some state parks that they might be interested in.
How about transporting deer out of the CWD zone?
This is a rule that we created a couple of years ago, but we relaxed it a little bit to make it a little bit more convenient for hunters who might harvest a deer in the CWD zone or another state where CWD is known to be present. In the past, they had to butcher it there before they could take the deer out, and it was kind of inconvenient for somebody who lived in another part of the state. So now they can take the whole deer carcass back home with them, provided they take it to a licensed taxidermist or a licensed butcher shop within 72 hours of registering that deer. And the reason for that is to make sure the head and the spinal column, the parts of the deer that were concerned about maybe transmitting CWD to other parts of the state, are taken to a place that has the ability to properly dispose of them.
All right, thanks a lot, Tom.
Okay.
Remember, you can call the DNR call center with questions, even from the field if you carry a cell phone. Call center staffers are available 7 days a week from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. And additional staff will be on duty during the gun deer season to answer your questions in English, Spanish, or Hmong. That number is 888-WDNR-INFO. Well, it's been a long day, and I'm getting kind of chilly. I've got some friends waiting for me inside the lodge here at Milford Hills Hunt Club, and I'll bet they've got a fire going. I invited a few friends to join me and share some of their deer hunting experiences. Now, Mark, you've been hunting for a long time. How'd you get started?
Started out family tradition. My dad took me hunting. Started out with small game, gradually was allowed to go big game hunting with the rest of the group.
All right. Now, Rachel, I imagine your dad took you hunting for the first time.
He did. I had a little bit, of the traditional household where the mom typically doesn't hunt and my father did hunt. And I never got into it until actually high school, end of high school, beginning of college. Just wasn't there, and I'm glad I finally did get into it.
And now it's a way that you two can do things together, I imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely a way that we've been able to bond. After my parents' divorce, then we were able to connect through this and really spend some quality time in the field together and be able to have some great memories to share.
Now, Carrie, you've been hunting with your dad for quite a while, haven't you?
Yes. 6 days old, my dad took me duck hunting.
No kidding.
He taught me at an early age how to be quiet in the woods, and it was always a tradition with the two of us. He really wanted a son, ended up with 4 daughters, so I had to fill that spot. It was a good hobby.
Now, Brad, I think we're going to have the same theme here. You got started with family, didn't you?
My grandfather and my father, they had a deer camp in northern Wisconsin, and I just got brought along. I mean, the first few years I didn't get to carry a gun, but I did get to sit in the woods with my dad. It was about 3 years before I got to carry a gun.
Now, that's kind of a tradition. Mark, you said you got started as a child with your dad. Did you hunt the first year, or were you the gopher or the tag-along? How'd that work?
Well, you know, with the rabbit hunting and stuff like that, I was the dog. I was the one who would bust the brush. I'd be the one to chase game.
Sure.
But then when it came to deer hunting, I had the regulations memorized. I had to make sure that he knew that I would be safe, and that in hunting camp, sometimes you have to know your place, too, in the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. Now, Brad, you've done a lot of hunting up north in what we'd call a traditional deer camp up in the North Woods. What was that like?
Well, we always hunted in the state forest. And the thing that I can't relate to from hunters downstate, when I was deer hunting, there weren't any boundaries. We basically, our boundaries were either a swamp or maybe some other hunters group territory where we didn't want to infringe on their hunting. So we would basically just hunt the big woods. It was a different type of hunting. You didn't have fences and you didn't have no trespassing signs. And for me to hunt downstate, it was hard for me to acclimate to that. When you took me last year, it was a very like, oh, you can only go to here.
Yeah, we got a corner. We
yeah,
can't
there's
go
a corner. We can't go beyond. So for me, that was awkward for me to do that.
Mm-hmm. But you got a deer.
But we got a deer. That's right.
Now, Rachel, where have you hunted with your dad?
Hickston. And so that one is actually a smaller quarters, and it's nice to be with the cousins. It's the one time a year that, you know, even if I am unable to take part in the deer for some reason that year, or I can't go out till later, it's always fun to come and, you know, share those close quarters with the cousins and the uncles and be able to share the stories and learn about what it meant to my dad and what it means passed down from my grandpa. And, you know, I was never able to hunt with grandpa, so that was something neat that I always get to hear is their stories with grandpa and what they got to experience.
Now, Brad, your camp, again, a traditional camp up north, and one of the features of it is the camp log. Talk about how important that is.
The camp log it's almost like a touchstone, something that you can relate to. You can sit back by the fireplace and read about hunts that have gone by. It really brings you back to when maybe some members of the camp that aren't there anymore, something you can really get back to. I still hunt on my dad's stand. It makes me feel good hunting where he used to hunt. It connects you with, it's almost like a timeless connection. When you read about the deer that we got in other years, you read those camp logs, those are always fun.
Carrie, your husband's a rock and roll musician, and he's not a hunter.
He's not a hunter.
How does he relate to your hunting?
He's really very supportive. And this year he's going to go again, and this year he promises to sit out in the blind. He says if nothing else, he can run a camera. So he's coming around. He'll never be a hunter. And it's okay. Yeah. It's really okay. But at least that he's taking the interest means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm. Now, Rachel, you're a recent hunter, and I'm sure you have friends who don't hunt and who've seen you become a hunter. What do they say about your hunting?
I've got a few girlfriends that are into hunting, and they took it up right away, and I thought they were crazy because I was too busy with my parties and my friends. My guy friends always hunted. But my guy friends have adapted to it very well. Were kind of surprised at first, but then now they're more than willing to take me out with them and definitely teach me some more things. And, you know, the biggest thing that I've learned is ask questions. Don't be afraid to admit that you can't or you don't know how to do something. Definitely for me with my friends, they, you know, call me up for a duck hunt or a goose hunt, or even to go out in a new territory for whitetail. And I, you know, have no familiarity with the area. So definitely just being able to admit, you know, I really will need your help with this. Can you know, walk me through it? I have the gear, but I'm going to definitely need some advice. Asking questions about anything that you're interested in, anything at all that relates to hunting is definitely a big step, and everything's a learning experience.
Some people may have recognized your name, Mark, as a well-known outdoor writer, and in fact, I asked you to bring a copy of the Deer and Bear record book, which you wrote many years ago. We won't say how many, but how has deer hunting changed in your experience since the time you wrote that book?
You know, in a lot of ways, I think it's timeless. And I think that each individual goes through a maturation. They go through the stages of a hunter. I find so much more pleasure now in taking someone else hunting, mentoring. I don't think that there's that big of a difference now, other than maybe technology, including good technology that helps for the comfort of the hunter and people being able to spend more time afield.
Brad, you used to tell me that every deer head has a story.
Well, the cover of his book with the Jordan buck on it, every Wisconsin hunter knows that story. But all the deer in my deer camp, I can look on the wall and every one of those has a very good story. You know, I want to hear that story. When someone shows me a deer head, I don't want to know, it's nice to know how many inches it is or how many points it is, but it's nice to know the story of the hunter who told it.
You know, Carrie, I know that's true for you and Brad, and I know it's true for Rachel, and I think it's true for Mark as well, that you were all with your dad when you shot your first deer. You know, we're going to keep this conversation going for a while. We hope you've enjoyed Deer Hunt 2011. Join us again next year when we do it all over again at Deer Hunt, Wisconsin 2012. So tell us how that